The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, crystal fragments catching the morning light streaming through James Wellington's corner office. His hands trembled as he stared at the headline blazing across his laptop screen. Wellington. Tech CEO under federal investigation for market manipulation. 24 hours. That's all it had taken for his empire to crumble. James pressed his palms against the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay, watching early commuters cross the plaza below. None of them knew their jobs hung in the balance. None of them knew about the encrypted files the FBI had seized or the allegations that could destroy everything he'd built. His phone buzzed. Another reporter? Mr. Wellington? His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. The emergency board meeting has been moved to 9 a.m., and sir, HR is asking about the new intern starting today. Should we postpone her orientation?
Emma Rodriguez.
James had personally approved her application after reviewing her portfolio, impressed by insights that reminded him of his younger, hungrier self. Now she was walking into a corporate disaster. No, he said, his voice rougher than intended. Send her up when she arrives. Maybe having someone new, someone untainted by the scandal, would help him think clearly. Or maybe he was just desperate for a distraction from the wolves circling his door. The elevator chimed at exactly 8:30. James straightened his tie and forced his features into a mask of control. Whatever happened today, he wouldn't let his company see him break. Emma Rodriguez stepped into the reception area wearing a navy blazer that had seen better days and clutching a worn leather portfolio like a shield. Her dark eyes swept the modern lobby with barely concealed awe. There was something else there, too. Determination, intelligence. She had no idea. She'd just walked into the eye of a storm, Miss Rodriguez. James appeared in the reception area, bypassing the usual HR protocol. Something about her steady gaze made him want to handle this personally. I'm James Wellington. Welcome to Wellington Tech. Emma's eyes widened slightly. She'd clearly done her research and knew exactly who he was. But instead of the usual stammering he expected from new employees, she extended her hand with surprising confidence. Mr. Wellington, thank you for this opportunity. Her handshake was firm, her palm warm against his. For a moment, the morning's chaos faded. This young woman had no idea about the federal investigation, the potential criminal charges, or the very real possibility that her internship might end before it began. Walk with me, James said, making a decision that would change both their lives. I want to show you something. He led her past the marketing floor, past the confused stares of employees already whispering about the morning news, to a private elevator that required his keycard. Emma followed without question, her presence somehow steadying his nerves. The elevator rose to the 42nd floor, to James's private retreat. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but James guided Emma to a different view entirely. On one wall hung a timeline of Wellington Tech's history, from his first apartment startup to their current global reach. Do you know what I see when I look at this? James asked, his voice carrying an edge Emma couldn't identify. She studied the timeline carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. A growth, innovation, but also risk. Every major expansion happened right after a significant setback. James turned to face her fully. This intern, barely 22 years old, had identified the pattern that had defined his entire career. She saw what seasoned analysts missed. What would you do, he asked slowly, if you discovered everything you'd built was about to be destroyed? By forces beyond your control? Emma's eyes searched his face, clearly sensing the weight behind his words. I'd ask myself if I was fighting for the right reasons, and then I'd decide whether to rebuild or burn it all down myself. The honesty in her answer hit him like a physical blow. Here was someone who understood that sometimes destruction was the only path to salvation. His phone erupted with incoming calls. James silenced it without looking away from Emma's face. Miss Rodriguez, how would you feel about skipping the CGA? Traditional intern experience? I have a proposition that's either going to make your career or end it before it starts. Emma straightened, meeting his gaze without flinching. What kind of proposition? The kind that requires absolute trust. The kind that means choosing a side in a war you don't understand yet. The morning sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the room. In the distance, James could see news vans gathering in the plaza below. The story was breaking wider. Soon, everyone would know about the investigation. But looking at Emma Rodriguez, seeing the intelligence and determination in her eyes, James felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. "I'm listening," Emma said quietly. And with those two words, she sealed both their fates. Emma's coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she couldn't bring herself to move from the conference room chair. James sat across from her, surrounded by legal documents, financial reports, and what appeared to be her entire future laid out in black and white. The short version, James said, his green eyes never leaving her face, is that someone has been using Wellington Tech's trading algorithms to manipulate stock prices. The FBI believes it was me. Emma's hands remained steady as she reached for the documents he'd placed before her. 3 weeks of encrypted communications, suspicious trades timing perfectly with her algorithm recommendations. Her work, her code, her insights that had impressed everyone so much. "But it wasn't you," she said. "It wasn't a question." "No, but proving that requires access to systems I've been locked out of."
"Oh."
"It requires someone the investigators won't suspect. Someone new." James leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Someone like you." The weight of his words settled in her chest. Emma flipped through the documents, her marketing background enough to understand the implications. Someone had been using her algorithms, her behavioral analysis models, to predict and manipulate market reactions to Wellington Tech's product launches. "Why me?" she asked. "You barely know me." James was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "3 weeks ago, you fell into my arms in that hallway. Literally and figuratively. But before that happened, you'd already submitted 18 pages of analysis about our marketing strategy. Analysis that was better than anything my senior team had produced." Heat rose in Emma's cheeks at the memory. The embarrassment of that first day felt like a lifetime ago. "You see patterns others miss," James continued. "You understand people in ways that made our campaigns more effective overnight. Whoever's framing me knew that. They've been using your work, your insights, to time their trades." Emma set the documents down carefully. "So I'm not just a witness. I'm an unwitting accomplice." "Or," James's voice turned harder, "you're the key to exposing the real culprit." Through the conference room's glass walls, Emma could see employees hurrying past, their faces tight with worry. The investigation had been public for 6 hours now. Stock prices were plummeting. People were going to lose their jobs. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" James pulled out a laptop and slid it across the table to her. "I need you to access our internal systems. Marketing has clearance levels that finance and executive teams don't. You can reach databases I can't touch anymore." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "You're asking me to hack into company systems. I'm asking you to save this company and yourself. Because when the FBI finishes their investigation, they're going to want to know how your algorithms became so conveniently predictive of market movements." The laptop screen reflected her face, pale and uncertain. Emma had come to Wellington Tech to build her career, not to risk everything on her first day. But the alternative was letting someone else destroy both her future and James's. "There's something else," James said quietly. "Something I haven't told anyone." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small digital recorder. "I've been getting threatening messages. Someone who knows about the investigation before it became public. Someone who wants me to take the fall quietly." Emma's blood chilled as James played the recording. A digitally distorted voice, cold and methodical. "Stop fighting this, Wellington. Plead guilty to the market manipulation charges, and we'll make sure the company survives. Keep investigating, and everyone goes down with you." "You think the real criminal is threatening you to keep quiet?" "I think someone very powerful wants me destroyed, and they don't care who gets hurt in the process." James's jaw tightened, "Including you." Emma stared at the laptop screen, her reflection wavering. She thought about her student loans, her family's sacrifices to get her through college, the career she'd dreamed of building. Then she thought about the employees she'd met, the projects she'd worked on, the genuine innovation happening in this building. And she thought about James Wellington, who could have quietly settled the charges and saved himself, but was instead risking everything to find the truth. "If I do this," Emma said slowly, "and we get caught, I'm not just losing my internship. I could face criminal charges too. Yes. And if we don't do this, the real criminal gets away with destroying your company and ruining my career before it starts." "Yes." Emma opened the laptop. The login screen appeared, waiting for her credentials. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. "There's one more thing you should know," James said, his voice softer now. "The day you fell into my arms, I was on my way to fire 3 people in marketing for underperformance. After reading your analysis, after seeing what you could do, I changed my mind. You saved their jobs without even knowing it." Emma looked up at him, seeing something vulnerable beneath his controlled exterior. "You're trying to manipulate my emotions. I'm telling you that your work matters, that you matter, and that sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything." The conference room felt smaller now, charged with possibility and danger. Emma could hear her own heartbeat, could smell James's cologne mixed with the leather of legal folders, and the ozone scent of electronics. She thought about her father, who'd worked 2 jobs to support her education, about her mother, who'd told her that opportunities came to those brave enough to seize them, about the woman she wanted to become. Emma typed in her login credentials. "Okay," she said, meeting James's eyes as the system granted her access. "Let's find out who's really pulling the strings." James's smile was fierce and grateful. "Emma Rodriguez, you may have just saved both our lives." But as the internal databases loaded on her screen, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much more dangerous than either of them realized. The patterns in the data were already showing her things that made her blood run cold. Someone had been watching Wellington Tech very carefully, and they'd been watching her too. The parking garage beneath Wellington Tech felt like a tomb at midnight. Emma's footsteps echoed off concrete pillars as she made her way to James's car, a sleek black sedan that cost more than most people's houses. They'd been working for 16 hours straight, following digital breadcrumbs through company databases, and what they'd found made her stomach churn. "Get in," James said, his voice tight with exhaustion and something darker. "Now we can't talk about this inside the building anymore." Emma slid into the passenger seat, immediately enveloped by leather and the scent of James's cologne. He'd loosened. His tie, hours ago, rolled up his sleeves, and there was something dangerously attractive about seeing him disheveled human. "Tell me you found something definitive," James said as he started the engine. Emma opened her laptop, the screen's blue glow illuminating her face. "I found everything. And James, it's so much worse than we thought." She turned the screen toward him, showing a network diagram that looked like a spider's web. "The person manipulating your algorithms didn't just use my marketing models. They've been infiltrating every department for months. Finance, development, executive communications. They have access to everything." James stared at the diagram, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Someone inside the company. Not just someone. Multiple people. "Look at these access patterns," Emma's finger traced. Lines across the screen. The trades were timed using information that required clearance from at least 4 different departments. "This is a coordinated attack." James drove them out of the garage and into the empty streets of San Francisco. The city looked different. At night, all shadow and neon, like a stage set for secrets. "There's more," Emma continued, her voice dropping. "I found communication logs. Encrypted, but I managed to crack them using patterns I recognized from our behavioral analysis work." She pulled up a series of decoded messages. James had to pull over to read them properly, parking under a streetlight that cast harsh shadows. Across his face, Phase 1, complete. "Wellington is isolated from board support," James read aloud. "Phase 2 initiated, Intern successfully integrated. Begin final manipulation protocols." Emma's blood turned to ice. "They planned my hiring. I'm not here by accident." James looked at her with new eyes, and Emma saw the exact moment doubt crept into his expression. "Emma, tell me the truth. Whose side are you really on?" The question hit her like a physical blow. "You think I'm part of this? After everything we've discovered together?" I think you're extremely intelligent, extremely talented, and extremely convenient. James's voice was cold now, professional. I think someone who can crack encrypted communications and identify systemic infiltration patterns might not be the innocent intern she claims to be. Emma felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she forced them back. Look at the timestamps, James. Really look at them. She pulled up another screen, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The communications about me start 3 months before I even applied for the internship, before I'd even heard of Wellington Tech. Someone researched me, identified my skills, and orchestrated my interest in your company. James studied the data, his expression gradually shifting from suspicion to something more complex. They've been planning this for months, years actually. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. I found communication logs going back to your IPO. Someone has been building toward this moment for a very long time. The car felt smaller now, charged with danger and possibility. Emma could hear James's breathing, could feel the heat radiating from his body. The investigation had pushed them together, forced them to trust each other in ways that felt intimate and terrifying. Emma, James said quietly, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. She nodded, not trusting. Her voice? When you applied for this internship, what did you really want? Emma closed her eyes, remembering the young woman who'd walked into Wellington Tech that morning. It felt like a lifetime ago. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to work for a company that was changing the world. I wanted to meet you. The last admission slipped out before she could stop it. Heat flooded her cheeks. You wanted to meet me? Your interviews, your vision for technology bringing people together, the way you built this company from nothing. Emma's words came faster now, like a dam bursting. I've followed your career since college. Not in a creepy way, just in an I want to be that successful someday way. James was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. So they used your genuine interest in the company to manipulate you into the perfect position. And they used my feelings about you to make sure I'd fight to clear your name. The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address. Emma stared at her laptop screen, afraid to meet James's eyes. Emma, look at me. She forced herself to meet his gaze. His green eyes were intense, searching. I need you to understand something. When this is over, when we've exposed whoever is behind this, there's going to be a reckoning. The board will want someone to blame. The media will want a story. And you and I were going to be scrutinized in ways you can't imagine. Emma nodded, her throat tight. I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to see this through? Because after tonight, there's no going back. Emma thought about the naive young woman who'd started her internship that morning. That person was gone, replaced by someone harder, more aware of how cruel the world could be, but also someone who knew what she was fighting for, I'm sure. James reached across the car and touched her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. The gesture was gentle, protective, and completely inappropriate given their professional relationship. And we finish this tonight. We find out who's really behind the attack, and we make them pay. Emma leaned into his touch, just for a moment. Before pulling away, I have one more surprise for you. I know where they're going to strike next. She turned her laptop screen back toward him, showing a schedule of upcoming Wellington Tech product launches. Tomorrow's board meeting isn't just about the investigation. They're planning to announce your removal as CEO and install someone new, someone who's been part of the conspiracy from the beginning. James's expression turned deadly. Ooh. Emma pulled up a final document, one that had taken her hours to decode. When James saw the name, his face went completely white. That's impossible, he breathed. But the evidence was undeniable. The person orchestrating James's destruction, the person who'd manipulated Emma's hiring and used her work to frame him, was someone he'd trusted completely. Someone who'd been planning his downfall from the very beginning. James, Emma said. Quietly, I think we need to call the FBI. But when James looked at her, his eyes were filled with something far more dangerous than fear. No, he said. We're going to handle this ourselves. The Wellington Tech boardroom at dawn looked like a battlefield waiting for war. Emma sat in the corner, officially present as James's research assistant. But her laptop contained enough evidence to destroy half the people in the room. Her hands trembled slightly as she watched the board members file in, trying to identify which faces belonged to conspirators. James entered last, immaculate in a charcoal suit that cost more than Emma's car. But she could see the tension in his shoulders, the controlled fury in his movements. They'd spent the night planning this confrontation, and everything depended on perfect timing. Ladies and gentlemen, announced Victoria Sterling, the board chairwoman, we're here to address the serious allegations against our CEO and determine the company's future leadership. Emma's heart hammered as she recognized Sterling's voice. It matched the encrypted communications they'd decoded, the ones orchestrating James's downfall. But Sterling wasn't acting alone. Before we begin, James said, his voice cutting through the boardroom's tension, I'd like to present evidence that will change everything you think you know about this investigation. He nodded to Emma, who connected her laptop to the room's display system. The first slide showed Wellington Tech's stock movements over the past year, well correlated with the timing of product launches and internal communications. Someone has been using insider information to manipulate our stock price, James continued. But it wasn't me. Michael Torres, Emma's supposed mentor from marketing, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Emma had discovered his digital fingerprints all over the manipulated algorithms, his access codes used to steal her behavioral analysis models. This is desperate deflection, Sterling interrupted. James, you're facing federal charges. Conspiracy theories won't save you. Actually, Emma said, standing for the first time, they're not theories, they're documented facts. She clicked to the next slide, showing the network of internal communications that had orchestrated the frame job. My analysis reveals a coordinated effort involving multiple board members, senior executives, and external partners to destroy Mr. Wellington's reputation and seize control of the company. The room erupted in voices, but Emma continued, her confidence growing with each revelation. The manipulation started 18 months ago when certain board members began questioning James's leadership. Rather than challenge him directly, they chose to engineer his destruction through manufactured scandal. She clicked again. Financial records appeared, showing money transfers between offshore accounts and the personal finances of 3 board members. They hired a corporate espionage firm to infiltrate our systems. They orchestrated my hiring to provide believable evidence of insider trading. And they've been planning to install Victoria Sterling as CEO once James was removed. Sterling's composed mask finally cracked. This is fabricated evidence, a desperate attempt to avoid accountability. Then explain this, James said, taking control of the presentation. The screen filled with a recording of Sterling's voice, crystal clear. Wellington has been neutralized. The board vote is secured. Once he's arrested, we can begin restructuring the company according to our investors' specifications. The silence in the room was deafening. Emma could hear her own heartbeat, could smell the tension in expensive cologne mixing in the recycled air. You recorded private conversations? Sterling's voice was deadly quiet. We documented criminal conspiracies, James replied. Emma's analysis led us to monitoring systems you didn't know existed. Every communication, every financial transfer, every coordination meeting, we have everything. Michael Torres suddenly stood, his face pale. I want immunity. I'll testify against everyone involved if you guarantee I won't face charges. Michael, Emma said, her voice heavy with disappointment. You were supposed to be my mentor. His eyes couldn't meet hers. You don't understand the pressure put on people, the threats. They made it clear that anyone who didn't cooperate would be destroyed. So you decided to destroy James instead? I thought it would be cleaner. One person taking the fall instead of dozens losing everything? Emma felt sick. The man who'd welcomed her, who'd praised her insights and made her feel valued, had been using her from the beginning. There's one more thing, James said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. Emma discovered something else in the communications logs, something that changes everything. Emma clicked to the final slide, her hands steady now, despite the magnitude of what she was revealing. The corporate espionage firm hired to destroy Wellington Tech. They're owned by Meridian Industries. Victoria Sterling's husband is Meridian's CEO. The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Sterling's carefully constructed facade finally shattered completely. "You little bitch," she snarled at Emma. "Do you have any idea what you've just done? The people behind this don't forgive. They don't forget. You've signed your own death warrant." James stepped protectively in front of Emma, his body language shifting into something predatory. "Are you threatening her?" "I'm telling her the truth. This goes far beyond Wellington Tech, far beyond what either of you understand." Emma felt ice in her veins. "What do you mean?" Sterling laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Meridian Industries has interests in 12 major tech companies. Well, Wellington Tech was just the beginning. You've stumbled into something massive, and now you're both liabilities." James's phone buzzed. Then Emma's. Then every phone in the room. Emergency news alerts flooding their screens. FBI raids Meridian Industries headquarters. Massive corporate espionage ring exposed. Wellington Tech CEO cleared of all charges. Emma stared at the alerts, confused. How did the FBI know? James smiled, the expression sharp and satisfied. "Because we didn't just document the evidence, Emma. We shared it. The recordings you made last night went directly to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit." Sterling's face went white. "You set us up." "You set yourselves up," Emma said, finding her voice. "We just gave you enough rope." The boardroom doors burst open as FBI agents entered, led by a woman in a severe suit carrying an arrest warrant. Victoria Sterling, the agent, announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit securities fraud, corporate espionage, and racketeering." As Sterling was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at Emma with pure hatred. "This isn't over, little girl. People like you don't win against people like us." Emma stood her ground. Protected by James's presence and strengthened by the knowledge that they'd exposed the truth. When the boardroom finally emptied, leaving only Emma and James surrounded by the debris of corporate warfare, the silence felt different, peaceful, victorious. "So," James said, loosening his tie, "how does it feel to save a multi-billion-dollar company on your first week as an intern?" Emma looked at him, at this man who'd trusted her with everything, who'd risked his reputation and freedom based on her analysis. The man she'd fallen for completely without meaning to. "James," she said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you." His green eyes searched her face. "What?" "When this started, I thought I was fighting to save your company. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was fighting to save you." James stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Emma Rodriguez," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you didn't just save my company, you saved my life." And as he reached for her face, as the morning sun flooded the boardroom with golden light, Emma realized that sometimes the most dangerous gambles led to the most extraordinary rewards. 6 months later, Emma stood in the same boardroom where they'd exposed the conspiracy, but everything had changed. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating her new office space. The nameplate on the conference table read, "Emma Rodriguez, Vice President of Strategic Analysis." And she still couldn't quite believe it was real. Wellington Tech had not only survived the scandal, but emerged stronger. The publicity surrounding their fight against corporate espionage had attracted new investors, brilliant employees, and industry recognition. Emma's algorithms, no longer corrupted by sabotage, had revolutionized their marketing approach and increased revenue by 40%. But success came with complications she hadn't anticipated. "The Wall Street Journal wants another interview," James said, entering the boardroom with 2 coffee cups and a stack of newspapers. "They're calling you the youngest VP in tech history." Emma accepted the coffee gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma. James had remembered her preference for vanilla undertones, a small detail that revealed how carefully he noticed everything about her. "I hate the interviews," she admitted. "They always ask about us." The us hung in the air between them, loaded with 6 months of careful professionalism and simmering tension. They'd worked together seamlessly, rebuilt the company together, appeared at conferences and investor meetings as the perfect executive team. but they'd never addressed what had almost happened in this same room that morning when the FBI arrested Victoria Sterling. They'd never talked about the way he'd looked at her, the way she'd felt when he'd stepped protectively in front of her, or the electricity that crackled between them during late-night strategy sessions. "Maybe," James said carefully, "it's time we figured out what to tell them." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "James, we've built something incredible here. The company is thriving. Our partnership works perfectly, and we've proven that. Wellington Tech can overcome anything." "That's not what I asked." She set down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. "What are you asking?" James moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his green eyes. The weight of 6 months spent pretending that what they felt for each other was purely professional. "I'm asking if you're happy. If this life we've built, brilliant as it is what you really want." Emma looked around the boardroom at the view of San Francisco Bay, at the life she'd never dared dream of having. "I have everything I wanted when I walked into this building. Hey, do you?" The question was soft, but it cut through her carefully constructed defenses. Emma closed her eyes, remembering the young woman who'd fallen into James Wellington's arms on her first day. That woman had wanted more than professional success. She'd wanted connection, passion, love. "The night we exposed Sterling," Emma said quietly, "you said I saved your life. But you never asked what it cost me." James went very still. "What did it cost you?" "My objectivity, my professional boundaries. It's my ability to pretend I don't feel things I have no right to feel." The boardroom felt smaller now, charged with 6 months of suppressed desire and carefully maintained distance. Emma could hear James's breathing, could smell his cologne mixed with coffee and the leather of expensive furniture. "Emma," James said, his voice rough, "look at me." She forced herself to meet his gaze, seeing her own longing reflected in his eyes. "The morning the FBI took Sterling away, I was going to kiss you. Right here, in front of the windows, in the boardroom where we just saved everything. Do you know why I didn't?" Emma shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Because I was terrified that you'd think it was about gratitude, about the adrenaline, about anything except the fact that I'd been falling for you since the moment you crashed into my arms." The confession hit Emma like a physical blow. 6 months of wondering, of careful professionalism, nights spent staring at the ceiling and imagining what might have been. "You were my boss," she whispered. "You were my boss. I was also a man whose life was falling apart, saved by a woman who chose to trust me when she had every reason not to." James stepped closer, close enough that Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body. "I've spent 6 months trying to be professional, trying to give you space to build your career without complications, trying to convince myself that what I felt was inappropriate, impossible, wrong. And now I'm tired of pretending, tired of interviews where they ask about us and I have to lie, tired of working 18-hour days with you and going home to an empty apartment because I can't have what I really want." Emma's breath caught in her throat. "What do you really want?" James reached for her face, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. "You, not as my employee, not as my business partner, not as the brilliant analyst who saved my company. Lie. Emma Rodriguez, the woman who saw through corporate conspiracies and federal investigations to the man underneath." Emma leaned into his touch, 6 months of restraint crumbling in an instant. "James, if we do this, everything changes. It's a company, our partnership, the way people see us, I know. The media will have a field day. They'll say, you promoted me because we're involved, that I'm not qualified, that this undermines everything we've built. I know, and you're willing to risk all of that." James's smile was fierce and tender. "Emma, you taught me that sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything. You've been risking everything for 6 months, building this company, proving yourself every single day. It's my turn." Emma felt tears burn behind her eyes, but they were tears of relief, of joy, of a future she'd been afraid to imagine. "The night we decoded Sterling's communications," she whispered, "when you touched my face in the car, I knew I was in trouble. Not because of the investigation, but because I was falling for someone completely wrong for me." "Wrong how?" "Successful? Too complicated? Too perfect? Emma smiled through her tears, too much like everything I'd ever wanted. James laughed, the sound filling the boardroom with warmth. Emma Rodriguez, you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever known. You're brilliant, fearless, ethical, and beautiful in ways that make me forget how to breathe. He cupped her face in both hands, his thumbs brushing away her tears. I love the way you see patterns no one else notices. I love your integrity, your courage, the way you fight for what's right even when it's dangerous. I love that you saved my company and then made it better than it ever was. Emma's heart felt like it might burst. James Wellington, I love you too. Your vision, your determination, the way you trusted me when you had no reason to, the way you've never made me feel like anything less than your equal. You're not my equal, James said softly. Emma's smile faltered. You're better than me, smarter, more ethical, braver when it matters most. You didn't just save Wellington Tech, Emma. You made me want to be worthy of the faith you placed in me. Emma felt her heart stop, then restart with painful intensity. James, I'm resigning as CEO. Words hit the room like a thunderclap. Emma stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? The board is announcing it tomorrow? I'm stepping down and recommending you as my successor. Emma's world tilted. That's impossible. I'm 23 years old. I've been here 6 months. You're the most qualified person in this building. You understand every system, every process, every strategic challenge we face. You've already been making the decisions that matter most. James, no. This company is your life's work. You built it from nothing. And now I'm trusting it to someone who will build it into something even greater. James's hands were steady. On her face, his green eyes intense with conviction. Emma, I've spent 10 years building Wellington Tech, but I want to spend the next 50 years building a life with you. Emma couldn't breathe. It's the magnitude of what he was offering. What he was risking overwhelmed her completely. You can't give up everything for me. I'm not giving up anything. I'm choosing what matters most. James's smile was radiant. Besides, I have a new job lined up. Doing what? Whatever the new CEO of Wellington Tech needs me to do. I'm told. She's brilliant, visionary, and completely extraordinary. I'd be honored to work for her. Emma laughed through her tears, the sound echoing off the boardroom's glass walls. You're insane. I'm in love. The words hung between them. 6 months of careful professionalism, finally shattered by the truth they'd both been running from. James. Wellington, Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I love you too, but I'm not taking your company. It's not my company anymore. It's ours. We saved it together, we built it together, and now we're going to lead it together as equals. The board will never approve it. James grinned, that sharp, confident expression she'd fallen in love with. They already have. Unanimous vote. Turns out, exposing a massive corporate conspiracy tends to build confidence in your judgment. Emma stared at him, this brilliant, impossible man who'd just turned her entire world upside down in the most beautiful way possible. So what are you saying? That we run Wellington Tech together while falling completely in love? I'm saying we already are running Wellington Tech together. The falling in love part is just catching up to reality. James leaned closer, his forehead touching hers. Emma Rodriguez, you are mine. Not as your boss, not as your mentor, but as the man who loves you completely. And if you'll have me, I'm yours too. Emma felt the last of her resistance crumble. James, people are going to talk. Let them talk. The media is going to be impossible. We'll handle it together. This is going to be complicated in ways we can't even imagine. The best things always are. Emma looked into his eyes, seeing her future reflected there. Not just professional success, but partnership, love, and the kind of life she'd never dared dream of having. Okay, she whispered. Okay? James Wellington. Let's be complicated together. And as he kissed her in the boardroom where they'd first trusted each other, where they'd exposed conspiracies and saved everything that mattered, Emma realized that sometimes the most dangerous gambles led to the most extraordinary rewards. Outside, The windows, San Francisco Bay, sparkled in the afternoon sun. Wellington Tech hummed with the energy of innovation and possibility. And Emma Rodriguez, the brilliant young woman who'd literally fallen into love and success, knew that her greatest adventure was just beginning. The newspapers would call it a corporate fairy tale. The business journals would analyze their partnership for years to come. But Emma knew the truth was simpler and more complex than any story they could tell. She'd come to Wellington Tech looking for opportunity and found everything she'd never known she wanted. Love, partnership, and the chance to build something extraordinary with someone who saw her exactly as she was and loved her completely. So, James said against her lips, ready to run the world together? Emma smiled, fierce and radiant and utterly unafraid. Try to stop me. The end asterisk like this video. If the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales. Share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.